What I want to talk about is at the intersection of education, philosophy, and architecture. Now, a lot of people have opinions about these things, and it's evident from the response that you were giving when the previous speaker was talking. So we have this immediate response to education, but it's also true about architecture. When you enter a place, though you may or may not realize, you are having a certain subconscious or even conscious response to how you respond to that place. Like, do you like being in this place? Do you feel that you belong to that place? And same with philosophy. Now, we associate philosophy as being something very arcane or something is just motivational philosophy, but what I'm talking about is your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own ideas about how the world should be, how the world should work, what is just, what is not just. You always have these opinions within yourself, or when you're arguing with someone or online, you always grapple with these ideas. And I started to think about this when I was studying, and then I came back to India in 2013, and I thought of starting a school. And a lot of people, when I was there and we were discussing that what would a school look like if you wanted to start a school, is nobody builds a brick and mortar school anymore. It's all online, and I was in a program which was about how technology is going to change education. So just the idea of building a brick and mortar school was kind of regressive. It's kind of, that's not a good idea. So I came back. I spent 2 years just thinking about building this perfect place of good architecture, good educators, good system, good curriculums, good relationships. I spent almost about 2 years just thinking, right? And like any wise man would do, I didn't do anything. I just kept on thinking. And I knew that had to stop at some point. Either I do something or I just stop thinking about it. And then I came across one day I had this habit of listening to really old speeches of people, and I heard Jorge Luis Borges. He tells a story. He's telling this story in 1967 about this young author who wanted to write better than Cervantes himself, the person who wrote Don Quixote. So he said, I want to be the greatest author ever, and I will spend years of my life just being better than Cervantes. So he spent years and years and years, and finally he produced work that was even better than Cervantes. But that work was 2 paragraphs. So we don't remember him anymore. What I realized that perfection can come in the way of action. Just my idea of what a perfect place could be was stopping me to actually go and create something. Right? It's kind of a counterintuitive idea, but you have to stop at some point and start doing something. At the same time, I met an architect here in this city itself, in the city of Ahmedabad, who put in my mind this idea of the difference between a space and a place. Now, he told me one line which I still remember. He said that any building, any ordinary building occupies space. It takes up space on the ground. Whereas a great building, a place where you feel belonged, will give you space, will give space to its inhabitants. You won't feel that it's occupying space. Now, it's a very subtle difference between space and place, but a place gives you belongingness. And that's something that I wanted to build. This is just one photo of the place that I've built. But before we go into what a school should look like, we all have ideas of what good education is, what good curriculum is. I believe that what shapes a learning institution more than the curriculum or the board or the quality of teachers is what the founding people who are starting the school, what they hold in their mind as the purpose of education. Until you have that clear in your head, the institution will shape very differently what you have imagined. For me, education is an end in itself. It's not a means. Right? We talk about reinventing education, how to change the whole paradigm of how we teach, how we learn. And over the past few years, we have started to resent this idea of the factory model of education, and it's rightly so. We don't like the vocabulary associated with it. We don't like when we call students raw materials, or we don't like the processes that we do in the institution, whether it's higher education or whether it's school. We don't like when we tell our students that they are the output of the institution. Those vocabularies we resent, and rightly so, I resent them as well. But in place of that, we have another inherent model of what education is, and that's one of economic subservience. We think of education as being subservient to the market, right? We want our kids to be participating in the knowledge economy, or we want to prepare them for the jobs of the future. There is this inherent belief that the purpose of education is to serve the economy or to serve your own economic goals. Now, it's fine to have that, but I didn't have that. For me, education is an end in itself, period. Education is good. It doesn't have to lead to anything else. Those things can be byproducts. What we need is an experience of living a shared life with certain other people in a safe place. That's, for me, what education is about. When we talk about the built space, so I want to talk about three things. The built space, how it impacts, or how you can think about it, how you think about the time that you spend in a learning institution. So those two are the outward manifestations of how you feel. And then there's one is internal manifestation. When you think about physical space, to very simply think about it is in terms of the orientation of space. So if you take this room, for example, it's inside and there's something outside. Within the inside, there are boundaries. Very simply, there's the floor, there's the walls, and there's the ceiling. Right? These three are the boundaries. These keep us out, away from the outside. They keep us protected, they keep us enclosed. Same way, there are boundaries outside as well. The boundaries of the outside are analogous. It's the ground, it's the horizon, and it's the sky. Very similar. But what matters is the openings in these boundaries that define the enclosure. So when you have a room, the openings are the doors, the windows, the thresholds. These define the place. These things define the place. Now, if you look at this picture, this is a standard visual of a classroom that we've all seen, probably we've all experienced. This place, of course, has a orientation in space. It has a floor, it has walls, it definitely has a ceiling, there are some openings. These things define a character. This place, this image is giving you certain feelings of what this space might be, what it allows and what it doesn't allow to do, right? It has a character. Now, what would be the antithesis of this room? What would be the opposite of this room? We might tend to think that it could be something like this. A more beautified room. It also has a floor and walls and ceiling. It looks vibrant. It has better colors. It has technology. It has probably a smart board and projectors. And the orientation of chairs is different. It may allow for certain new kinds of interactions. But I don't think that this is the antithesis to the earlier image. They can be inherently the same. The antithesis has to be in the character, not in the physical arrangement of space. It doesn't mean that if you have this classroom, you're doing better. No. This is a standard day in my school, where what I would like you to think about is where are the boundaries? Where are the boundaries of the space? Where is the ceiling? Where are the walls? Where is the floor? And is the character fundamentally different? Or is just the space that is different? Of course, the space is different, but what matters is what is the character, right? How is the character different? You see things like this. When we think about boundaries, we don't just think about boundaries in the space. Think about boundaries that exist in the curriculum. Science is science, math is math, English is English. Think about boundaries between the teacher and the student. The teacher is supposed to be like this, the student is supposed to be like this. Think about boundaries between students themselves. Grade 3 is grade 3, grade 4 is grade 4, grade 5 is grade 5, there's no interaction. We need openings and doors and thresholds in these boundaries as well, not just the physical boundaries. These boundaries need to be more porous. They need to allow more interaction. That changes the character, not just the physical space. These boundaries, when you break them, they change the character. Now we've talked about the boundaries in terms of space. That is one kind of orientation that a place has to do. There's another kind of orientation that a place must do, which is the orientation in time. Now, about 3 weeks ago, we were having an event at my school where kids talk to their parents. The parents come to school, and then kids would talk about what they've been learning over the last 5-6 weeks. And one of the kids, one of the girl, was the question was, what does a plant need to grow? So she says the plant needs soil, and the plant needs sunlight, it needs water. Everybody was very happy, glad. This beautiful answer, right? Probably the girl in kindergarten 1. And the girl, after about 10 or 15 seconds, she said, oh, wait. I think the plant needs love and care as well. It's not a scientific answer. She thinks, she waits, she thinks about it, and then she said, they need love and care as well. And what this demonstrates is that children have an innate capacity for compassion. And in this case, the element of compassion for plants was that it needs time. You can't just put the seed in and the next day it's going to come out. No, it needs time. That's the value of compassion for trees or for plants. How do we get kids to orient in time? It's very difficult. We live in a world where everything is instantaneous. Everything is instantaneous. We've been fed this idea of change, that if you don't speed up, you're going to fall behind. You better speed up to hang on. We are fed this idea of instant change, of rapid change. But it's good to remind ourselves that the basic needs of human beings don't change. The need to feel loved, the need to belong, the need to be appreciated. These things don't change, no matter how fast everything else is changing. To be able to feel those things, we need certain slowness in life. We need to be in sync with the temporal sense of nature. Right? Nature doesn't work like technology. It's not instantaneous. How do we get people to appreciate and get in sync with the temporal sense of nature? To do that, what we've done is we've started a horticulture program. Extremely simple, but rarely done in schools. Now, nothing about horticulture or gardening is instantaneous. Nothing is instantaneous. Kids have to sow the seeds, wait probably some days for it to germinate, wait some more, take care of it. Someday it will start having some bigger leaves, which will probably bear some fruit. But this takes weeks, probably months. It's not instantaneous. What we want kids to understand, of course, is the scientific understanding of how trees and plants grow, the value of labor, the value of manual labor, but also try to get them into sync with the speed of nature. Everywhere else in life, the speed of how we live is fundamentally different from how nature works. We need to get them into a temporal sense with nature. So now we've talked about the orientation in time, the orientation in space, but that's all outward manifestation. How do we get people to orient themselves in their heads, in their minds? We live in a very, very confusing, chaotic, maddening world. How do we find our bearings? How do we find our foothold of how to make sense of the world? What we've missed out on doing, what schools and institutions of other learning, is that we don't allow kids to have an experience of the complex. And it's evident everywhere in our media, in our social media, everywhere, that wherever we see complexity, we kind of fall back and we want everything black and white. We want, is this right, is this wrong, is this good, is this bad? No gray area. We are missing the middle gray. And what that does is that we tend to offload our thinking to everything else. For example, I'm not against cognitive offloading. If I wanted to do a complex mathematical formula or a process, I would offload that to a calculator. It's the right thing to do. Or if I wanted to be reminded that I have a meeting at so-and-so time, I would like my smartphone to remind me. That's fine. But we as adults, and particularly kids, don't know where to stop that offloading. We keep on extending that offloading for decidedly humane and complex matters. Somebody else deciding for us, is this right, is this wrong? Somebody telling us, this is how it's supposed to be done, this is how it's not supposed to be done. We need to get children to experience the complex ideas and hold them and process them process them with authentic approach, what they truly believe. And that's very difficult. We get disoriented. We don't like being bombarded with complex ideas. So what do we do? What do we do to get them to appreciate the complexity of life? What we've done is we started a philosophy program. Now, again, there are a lot of negative connotations with the word philosophy, particularly philosophy in school. It's very arcane, it's impractical. What is the value of it, doing it in a school? Kids are not smart enough to engage in philosophy. All wrong. Kids are incredible philosophers. They have certain views of life that would even surprise you. And we are just taught out of it. We don't engage ourselves in that anymore. What we do in this program is not just talk about motivation or self-help. No, these are the things we don't address because they're being addressed sufficiently outside. We take extremely complex, difficult ideas from the ancient Greeks, Socrates and Plato, to modern masters, relatively modern masters, Hume, Nietzsche. Doing that with kids in middle school, high school can be difficult, but it's surprisingly refreshing. They are able to engage with these ideas. We take literature from ancient India, from the East, and they are able to engage with this in a really authentic way. They are able to share what they feel, they're able to read. We don't patronize kids by lowering the intellectual demands, because what has happened is we've not put intellectual demands on our kids. This is complex, you need to deal with it, right? These are complex ideas, you need to learn how to grapple with them. And these ideas are so complex, and we give them scaffolds. We don't bring down or we don't water it down, right? So that's, I think, extremely important. What I want to end by saying is that schools now are one of the last remaining social institutions where we are able to experience the shared, the common, the greater. These are last passions of a common life, of a shared life. Everywhere else, it's all individual. But in schools and learning institutions, we still have the hope of having this common shared life that we live together for many years. And our goal should be to orient kids and inhabitants of that place to have orientation in time, orientation in space, but also a mental orientation, so that they are able to find their own place in this complex, maddening world, so that we all can together make a better world. Thank you.